Sis, we are about to. Oh, I got to put in my translating voice. Okay. Shalom, shalom. Welcome once again
Amen.
to our midweek midrash. Yes, it is that time, midweek midrash. And we
Very
thank you for those who are joining us live and those who are joining us later because Wednesday's always a busy night. I realize that. And if you can give us a couple minutes, we want to give you what we have to share, which is always an earful, which is always a mouthful. And we want to share what we can concerning various topics. And we've been focused these past few weeks on Psalm 19 and the beauty of it and the message of it. And I already said beauty of it, but I mean also on an aesthetic level, a poetic level. It is very deep and it's beautiful, just like regular poetry. You know, we hear poetry telling a story, but we appreciate the beauty of the. It's only words on one hand, but it's the use of the words, it's the flow of the words that create beautiful poetry.
yes.
Otherwise, we're just reading prose. But poetry has that tug at the heart because there's balance and there's symmetry, and it's also with regards to song lyrics, poetry set to music, and the psalmist had that exactly in mind as he set these words alight
Mhm.
to illuminate as well as to entertain, as well as to make joyful noise unto Yahuwah, unto
Mhm.
the Lord. So it's tov to the highest level if we can get a grasp on the beauty of the Psalter, on the beauty of the motivation, the beauty of the art involved. It's not just some haphazard words thrown together and spilled out like what's that game that we play with? Well, if you Scrabble, it's not like Scrabble. It's very carefully chosen words and ideas and prophecies and light.
Yes.
Illumination is what the word of Yah is, and it lights our path. Not just Torah in the five books of Moses, the Chumash. It is the whole entirety. The not just the Torah, but the Chatavim, which is the prophetic words through the Psalms and the works
Mhm.
of
Yes.
wisdom, as well as the Nevi'im, which is the prophets. But that's Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Chatavim, and they're all equal parts. They all speak to us in beauty as well as prophecy of how things are now, how things are moving along, how things were, and how things will be. So it's extremely tov, very, very good. Tov ma'od, very good. We're about to tackle verse 11, but we're going to have a review before we have our brother Gilbert say the opening prayer. But before you do that, Gilbert, let me just give Herman a chance to to catch his breath after all my word salad
Yeah.
that I just made out there.
Yeah. Well, Bob, you mentioned a lot of things that I like. You mentioned Tanakh, you mentioned poetry, and you also mentioned Scrabble, which I like Scrabble too.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
So you mentioned a lot of juicy things there, and it looks like Hadassah has signed in. Well,
yes,
Hadassah's
yes.
in the house.
Good evening to you and shalom to everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, Hadassah, and a beautiful sister she is, and filled with wisdom and beauty on her own as she joins and she
Yeah.
lets us know what's on her heart and on her mind, and it's always Tov. Thank you, sister.
Yes.
Very good.
Yep. Okay. Well, on a more serious note, hello to everyone out there. I'm looking forward to today's study. And hello. And yeah, we're gonna keep plugging along. Um, yeah, let's get to it. That prayer, Gilbert, blast it through with that beautiful prayer that you're gonna about to say.
Amen. Shalom, Gil. Are you there, Gilbert?
I'm not hearing you.
Oh,
Hello?
okay. Yes, sir. If you could open in prayer for us.
Okay. Almighty and everlasting Father,
Yes,
as you have taught us to call the evening, the morning, and the midday one day, and have made the sun to know it's going down. Dispel the darkness of our heart, that we may brightness, we may know you to be a true Elohim, eternal light, and reigning forever and ever. Amen.
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 Toda rabah. Also, the fact that this week, actually going back to early Sunday morning, we had the spring. What is that called? spring ahead, fall behind. It's called the Gina.
What?
What's that called? The spring ahead.
Daylight saving time.
Daylight saving time.
Same time, yeah.
So a lot of us are a little out of sorts for a couple of days because we've lost an hour here. I woke up early Sunday morning and I said, "Wow, I thought I was late because it was like an hour later than what it should have been in my mind and my body." So for some of us, it takes a couple of days to get up with the change of the externals. It gets how late it stays dark, how late it stays light, and how early it is, and whatever, all these things.
Well,
So-
Bob, over here in the South, it gets to the point where it's practically light, about 8:45. It's still light outside.
Right.
It's
Right.
amazing down here in the South.
Man, it's amazing. Very much amazingly so. Well, thank you, Gilbert. We thank you for the opening prayer. And I believe Herman would like to start by doing a review.
Breaking up, I know. Breaking up.
Okay. I don't know. That must be the phone there because I'm not breaking up in the program. I'm in now. Okay. Yeah, it's the phone, Gil.
Okay. Let's get to the review.
Yes, sir.
Look forward to that. Okay, folks. As always, you know my style. I like to do the review. So here we go. It'll be brief, of course.
Well, take your time with that because we got plenty of time.
Okay, so now it's not responding. It is
No, it's
not
on the screen.
Excuse me?
It's on the screen, but it's partial screen. It's not the full screen.
Yes. What about now? Is it still on the screen?
No, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are the beautiful things. The beautiful things. I'll have to give it another attempt.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks.
No problem. It's gonna be good.
Yes, it'll be good. All right. One moment here. Does not register, Bob. Oh boy. It is not registering. It's not coming. It's not presenting itself on the screen, unfortunately. All right, let's try it again.
Is the professor at home tonight?
Yes, the professor's upstairs, but I'm hoping that I wouldn't have to bother him. Wow. How interesting. Yes. All right. I hear some movement upstairs. And all right, let's try it again. Sorry, folks.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little tap dancing while we wait for this.
Yes, well, listen, Bob, do you know any jokes in the meantime? Because this does not seem to present up on the screen here. All right, let me minimize here. And
Okay. Okay, well we'll be there momentarily. And
no, it's not going to come up, Stephen.
what's that, Mama? You got your headphones on, right? You hear what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Stuff. Okay.
All right, folks. Bob, in the meantime here, I'm having some technical difficulty. The PowerPoint does not want to present. So let me just try one more time. Open what?
Open the PowerPoint.
It is open.
Announcement. Yeah. Open. Yeah, not true.
Okay, I hear the voice of the professor. I know that
Yeah, the
things.
professor's here by my side. Okay, here we go. Let's see. All right, the professor came.
Here it comes.
Thank you. There we go. Okay. All right, folks, here we go. Without any further ado, what I touched on last time, of course, was on the fear of the Lord and the judgments of the Lord. And I stated that the fear of the Lord is more than just a precept, it is a state of mind and it is foundational in your relationship with Yah. Our reverence towards Him enhances our ability to enter into His divine presence and to commune with Him. Very important. And now, regarding the judgments, I mentioned that the judgments refer to judicial rulings on several levels, and I'm not going to go into the levels. Please refer to last week, where I touch on the three different levels of the judgments of the Lord. And I did state that although at times it is harsh, Yahweh's judgments are based on justice and fairness. They are not based on feelings. They are not based on feelings. And as you and I discussed last week, Bob, that there is a tendency for people today to operate on the feelings. And although feelings has its place, uh, we should not operate with feelings all the time.
Exactly.
Then, yes. And then, of course, I shared this and I stated that at the end of the verse, there is a transition, and it transitions from what you see now, which is here in the Hebrew. This is the structure in the Hebrew, and it transitions to this. And then, of course, I talked about the color coding and so on in both of these slides. I touched on the color coding and the symmetry, and that was it. So today, hope to focus on verse 10 and possibly a portion of verse 11. And we're going to see how the Lord's ways are compared to two natural resources and two commonly posted signs. And of course, we go out into the world, we see signs left and right, speed limit signs, this sign, warning sign, welcome signs. There are all sorts of signs, and that's what we're going to touch on. Two resources and two signs. Okay, Bob? Anything you'd like to touch on? Our review of last week?
Yeah. I was just going to say, when you talk about the transitions of the time meter and such like that, there's a YouTube channel I visit from time to time with Rick Beato, who's a brilliant music producer who has an amazing ear. And in fact, I think he has a video of his son when he was little. He hit, while his son was looking away, he would hit a chord, and the guy with that C major with a this, that, and the other thing. He had this perfect pitch. So, but he talks about some music that is successful and why is it successful. And they talked about the meters, about the timing, about 4/4 time, and then switching, making a transition into the verse, into the chorus, and how certain things evoke a response in us. The beauty of that transition is palpable because it makes the song successful. It could all weigh upon a certain little movement, a certain little nuance is the thing that gets us. And when we talk about the Psalter, of course, we're incorporating that within the revelation. So, wow, it's almost like an unfair advantage that Yah has in the Psalms over other forms of literature. Although a lot of literature has been inspired by Yah also, because a lot of early writers and early poets, like Bach, for instance, in his music, he would dedicate to different songs and such to the glory of the Creator and such like that. And Handel, and a lot of people had his. Back then, it was not an anomaly to give credit to the Creator, to give thanks to Yah. In fact, if it wasn't, you were looked as a heretic practically. If you didn't acknowledge Yah, if you didn't somehow, if you said anything scandalous, you were basically, you were shouted down and such. But the beauty of this and in the Psalm of the fear of Yah is the beginning of wisdom, and fools reject instruction, fools. And that's not just somebody who's simple in the head, but morally bankrupt people in the sense of foolishness, because a dark foolishness is what evil is. Evil is a dark foolishness that does not give credit or acknowledgement to the presence of Yah. But we do. That's like you just said, Herman. It's the doorway to enter into his presence. If we don't respect him, we're not allowed in. If we don't show the proper attire, like the parable of the wedding, if we don't think it's worth our while to wear the wedding clothes that he provides, because don't forget, at the last calling, he got people right off the highways and byways. So, of course, they're working, they're schlepping back from work and such like that, and they're called to the banquet. So a wedding, appropriate garments would have been provided for them at the door.
Right.
Just like today, when you go to a Jewish wedding or a Jewish funeral, they have a kippah. They have a thing for kippot, for anyone to come and put a kippah on, because a lot of people don't walk around with their kippot on. So, the provisions are made for you. And if you don't think it's worth, if you're going to say, well, I'm just going to sit where I want to sit, which is way up front, and I don't have to show any extraordinary reverence. This is just, they call me, I'm just, I'm just attending this thing. I want to have some free food and entertainment. And, the king whose son was being married says, "Excuse me, sir, who are you?" And, he had his boys, which were bouncers, and they bounced him out. So you don't get into the presence of Yah by taking this lightly. Not at all.
Right.
And I think we don't take it serious enough sometimes. We don't truly revere Yah in fear. In fear. It's just like if we messed up, and mom would usually play the burden on the dad. Says, "Wait till your father gets home."
Whoa.
That's the real sign of panic, right? And of course, we come home and our hearts are much softer and easier to melt, and our babies, wrap us around their little finger, and we usually don't wind up doing much at all. But just the fear, there's the fear of dad when he comes home. He's worked hard all day, and he's coming home, and you did this, and he's going to feel betrayed because he taught you better. How dare you do that? So if it's ingrained in us to have reference, we don't want dad to know about this. Please, mom, don't tell dad. And mom's going to say, look, we're in a united front. You're not going to tell me and leave dad out in the dark. You're not going to, be a weasel and think that you can schmooze me and leave dad in total ignorance of what happened. We're a united front. And I think that's a problem with a lot of couples, that they don't present a united front to their children. They don't stand united, and whatever judgments need to pass, they need to be united in this. And as Herman was saying, it's not just how you feel. That's why it says our heart and our minds. The perfect peace that surpasses our understanding, to guard our hearts and our minds in Messiah Yeshua. The word says. The word also says, "I will make a covenant with you, a brit chadashah, and I will put my Torah, my words, in your hearts and in your minds." And it'll find, that's where it is. It's not just one or the other. It's not both. It's no good. You got to have both components in there in order to be successful. It sort of reminds me of the bombardier beetle, which expunges a toxicity that is, if a bird comes after this bug and it turns its back on them, watch out, because there is this strong acid that comes out. And why doesn't this acid destroy the bug? Well, the thing is that he has two separate gas tanks, if you will, and when he feels threatened, as it's going out, they combine, the stream going outwards. But if they were combined already, he would incinerate himself. So it's interesting. You need both components to be effective. And our weaponry is the word. And it needs to have appeal to the heart and to the mind to fully be appreciated. Most people have it on their hearts. Oh, I love the Lord. I love him. He's my this, he's my that. But when they hear about his judgments, they say, wait a minute. I thought we had the New Testament God, not the Old Testament God, because the falsehood of people teaching that the Old Testament God was a stern ruler. The New Testament God is kind of a pushover, and he's the same yesterday, today, forever. He does not change. He's consistent. He's the model of consistency, and that's why we need to adapt his character to walk, even as Messiah walked, as an example for us in his everyday existence, in his everyday practice.
Well, Bob, you made a lot of good points. Made a lot of good points there regarding the two components of the Bamaria beetle, comparing it with the heart and the mind and the fear of the Lord, and of course the transition, that artistry which is applicable to both in poetry, written poetry, as well as music. And as a kid, Bob, as a kid, I always found the transition in music very appealing and interesting. And as I got older, I would focus a lot in musical transitions, and it was something that really drew my attention. And of course, in the written text as well. So it's something that I grew up with, this concept of transitions. Yeah. All righty. So we're going to move on, folks, and let's begin our meal. The text says, more to be desired are they, and I'm going to touch on the they a little bit to try to describe who the they are. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them your servant is warned, and in keeping them there is great reward. Okay. So as I said earlier, we have two natural resources. We have gold and fine gold. And of course, we often relate that with financial value. Then we have the honey and the dripping honey, or honey from the comb. And what I draw from that is nutritional value. Okay? While the two signposts are, as I said, warning signs, which protect us and guide us. And then we also have reward signs, which can also be viewed as having financial value. Okay, so this is a good way of viewing these two verses with financial value, nutritional value, which can also be applied to spiritual value, because I'm going to go in that direction, and protective value as well as financial value. Okay, so verse 10. As I read in the English, more to be desired are they than gold, yea, more than fine gold. Ha nechemadim misahav umipaz rav, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Tukim midavash ve nofet sufim. So that's how the Hebrew would sound. Okay, so I want to focus a little bit on this term here, ha-nechamadim, which is more to be desired. And for those that are familiar with Hebrew, that im ending is plural, masculine plural. And it can be interpreted as the ones to be desired. And you'll notice that I've underlined the S there, the ones to be desired, which is in masculine plural. Now, this can refer to the mishpatei Yahweh, the judgments of Yahweh, because judgments is also in masculine plural. However, I think it goes beyond the mishpatei. I believe that ha-nechamadim refers to all of the previous regulations that we find in the poem, okay? It refers to the law, to the testimony, the commandment, and the fear, even though these terms are in feminine. And of course, we have a masculine term up here. But even though law, Torah, and Edut, and Mishpah, and Yirah are feminine, the word for statutes and the judgments, of course, are masculine. So what's going on here? We have feminine and masculine. But in the Hebrew language, when you have a mixed group of masculine and feminine terms, or a mixed group of people, male and female, whenever they are addressed or spoken of, they are always addressed or spoken of in the masculine. So getting back to the what I think this refers to, I really do believe that it refers to all of the previous regulations, although some are feminine. Okay, and this is the conclusion that I come up, as I said, that the ones to be desired point to all the regulations in the poem. All right, so that's really what I wanted to share there, and let's move on.
Could I just throw in something? All the Romance languages,
Yes.
it's a mixed group of male and female. It has a masculine point. You can have, 1,000 women and 2 men in a crowd, and you have to address them in the masculine. That's why we're having the problem these days with pronoun changes. And it's like, for instance, instead of Latino and Latina, we're saying Latin X, or all these things, because we don't want to have that masculine overriding.
Yes.
And so I think Herman makes a good point. And English is his second language. He's Spanish is his primary language, so he knows these things also. He knows that these rules are steadfast and true, and that's what happens. So again, I agree 100% that this is talking about all of them, including the fear of Yah. That's also
Yes.
to be desired.
Yes. And Bob, you're right. Spanish is my first language, and it is that way. When there are a group of people, we address the group. When there's a mixed group, I should say, we address the group in the masculine. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. And the same thing is in Hebrew. Yeah. Good point there, Bob. Good point with the Romance languages. Okay. Now, what we see here is that we have a yellowish in color theme, right? So we have this yellowish in color. We have the gold and fine gold, and we have honey and honey from the comb. And this repetition, folks, is for emphasis. When you come across repetition in scripture, it is for emphasis. However, there also seems to be a distinction in grade. Okay, so keep that in mind, the emphasis and a distinction in the grade. Now, I like to read the Young's literal translation, and for those people that are not familiar with the Young's literal translation, I would recommend that you check it out. Most likely it is online for free. I'm 99% sure it's online for free. Please make that a good resource. It is very, very good, especially if you're trying to learn Hebrew or Greek. You'll get a better idea of what the Hebrew or the Greek says when you go to the literal translation, because it's a literal translation. So with the Young's, the Young's renders it, they are more desirable than gold, yea, than much fine gold, and sweeter than honey, even liquid honey of the comb. And the reason why I think that there is not just emphasis, but a distinction in the grade, because notice you have gold and then fine gold or pure gold. And then you have honey, but then you have the honey that's dripping directly from the comb. So keep that in mind as I go along. The emphasis and the distinction. All right, so as I have said many times in the past, folks, the physical helps us to understand the spiritual. And this is a theme that I'm going to repeat in this evening. The physical helps us to understand the spiritual. All right, now, the value of gold, of this metal, is derived from the amount of time that mankind puts into it, the money that they invest, and the energy that is used to extract this metal from the earth. And then, of course, it has to be separated from the ore, from the rocks that it's stuck to. But there's a lot of time, money, and energy used to extract this precious metal, right? And just as the miners have to dig deep to obtain this precious metal, we too, folks, we have to dig deep into the scriptures in order to extract these golden treasures that we have in the Word. And included in that are all the regulations. It's not just the pretty parts, as you say, right, Bob? It's touchy and feely and beautiful, but then when it comes to the judgments, but all of the things that are in scripture are treasures, golden treasures.
Yes.
And this is one of the lessons that I got from the energy that it takes to obtain this precious metal, because it is precious, but the word is more precious.
Amen.
Okay, again, the physical helps us to understand the spiritual. And just as the people, Lord, we work hard and we secure this goal, we buy it and we put it on the lock and key. We may go to a bank and have a safety deposit box there, right? We keep it on the lock and key, right? So too, folks, so too, we are to guard his ways in our heart, on the lock and key in our hearts and in our minds. I should have put minds there too, right, Bob?
Yeah.
Right? With on the lock and key. And I'd like to read two verses here, Psalm 119, where it says, Your word, referring to the word of the eternal. The psalmist says, Your word I have hidden in my heart that I may not sin against you. Right? That treasure is in the heart. And as you say, Bob, I agree with you, not just the heart, but in the mind, saturating our complete being. And then, of course, in Yeshua's words, when he says, For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So notice how he associates the treasure with the heart. And if we consider the word, the Bible, the scriptures as a treasure, and then it should be there in the heart and in the mind. So where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And honestly, and I don't mean to brag, but my heart is with that. It really is. Okay, once again, folks, the refrain, the physical helps us to understand the spiritual. And just like we folks adorn ourselves with gold, right? We have a lot of beautiful gold jewelry, whether they're earrings or necklaces or bracelets, rings, and so on. Just like we adorn ourselves with gold, likewise, we are to adorn ourselves with the Lord's ways, with fear, with the judgments, with the commandments, with the statutes, and so on. We are to adorn ourselves with that. All right. And I have just two pictures here of this beautiful gold jewelry because it is beautiful. And, when I see jewelry like this, what it reminds me of is the Indian people from India, because I have gone to several occasions, whether birthday parties or and other celebrations, weddings, and so on. And when these Indian women they put on their saris and they have this gold jewelry, it is absolutely beautiful, beautiful. And they really do adorn themselves with this gold jewelry, the Indian women. And of course, the saris are absolutely beautiful and colorful. And that's how they adorn themselves in these special occasions, folks. And we are to do the same thing. We are to adorn ourselves with the word. So that's just a little sample. Have another image here. The beauty and the artistry, right? And it gives it even more value when the gold is worked like this. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, folks, moving on. Again, the theme, the physical helps us to understand the spiritual. And people work hard, right, to invest their money in gold. And that's beautiful. It's okay. We should invest money because it's a good thing, right? But are you, folks, are you out there investing your time and your energy to live in accord with the Lord's ways? Okay. In particular, I had to throw this in, the golden rule, right? Because we're talking about gold. In particular, the golden rule, right? And I have the reference there. And for those folks that don't know what the golden rule is, I want to really encourage you. I know most people do, but I want to encourage you. Go to the scriptures and read Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, where you get the golden rule, since we're on the theme of gold. Okay, now, the Bible has a lot to say about gold, right? There's a lot of gold in the Bible, in more ways than one, in connection to vocabulary, but in connection to its value. Okay, so our verse has two golden words, right? It has sahav, which is the most common word in the Older Testament, sahav, but our verse also has paz. Now, And of course, we're going to learn a little vocabulary here. But there are other, believe it or not, while I was researching here, there are other words that are translated gold in the Bible. And the Bible has a lot to say about gold. In Job, it uses uh, betzer, betzer. And then in Isaiah, you have ketem. In Proverbs, you have charutz. And then in Daniel, you have the Hav. And the Hav seems to be related to Sahav, seems to be a cognate. The Hebrew Sahav and the Aramaic Dahav. But man, there is a lot of gold in the Bible and a lot of adjectives to describe the gold. Okay, folks, so there's a little vocabulary for you already. And maybe you may want to look it up and have yourself a golden study on your own time. Okay, folks, you like that one, Bob?
Yes, it did.
All righty. Now, Solomon. Solomon was a man who had access to plenty of gold, plenty of it. But notice what he says. He says, how much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. That's a powerful statement. And as you can see, folks, I have the color coding here so that you can get an idea of the poetry in the word pairs, because this is a synonymous parallelism, a synonymous parallel. So the color coding is for free. I put it in there for free. All right. So you can analyze it on your own time. Okay. And I'd like to give it a shot and read the Hebrew, of course. So it says, Keno, Keno Chochma, and this is a Kametz Hatuf, so it's Chochma as opposed to Chachma. Keno Chochma Matov Mei Charutz, and that's one of the words, Charutz, one of the words for gold. And then it says, U Ketonot Bina Nivhar Mi Kasef, as opposed to Kasef, normally Kasef, but in this case Kasef because it's in pause by the Siluk. All right. So there is a very wise statement. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Proverbs 16:16. All right, folks. So as I said earlier, there is a repetition in the expressions for emphasis, but yet at the same time, there seems to be a distinction in grade. And let's see, what do I have here? Now, of course, we all know that there is greatness in the word, but then there's something that's greater, right? So the question is this: well, what can be greater than the word that contains the law, the testimony, the statutes, the commandment, and so on? What can be greater than that, right? Than those things. And I conclude, folks, I conclude that what can be greater than that is the word that became flesh. There is a degree. There is a degree there. You have the word, yes, the commandments, the statutes, the testimony, and so on. But then you have the word that became flesh and dwelled among us, the only begotten of the Father. And it was that word that gave his life so that we can have life. So this is what I say, that there is a sense of degree going on there. And the same thing with the honey. Same thing with the honey. So before I shift gears to the honey, Bob, I want to stop here because much was said about the gold, and I don't want to transition into the gold and honey. Before, I would prefer that you share a little bit on the gold before the gold and honey. Alrighty, I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
Amen. Again, I find, as I was talking earlier with you, of the word for the ones being precious or the to be desired is chamad, which means to covet, to delight in, to desire, to lust after, essentially. And it's the same word that's used in Shemot, Exodus 20, verse 7, about you shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's possessions. You should not covet what belongs to someone else, but to covet is to desire, to, in essence, to lust after.
Mm.
And people lust after money. People lust after gold. And his point here is that he presents that the pinnacle of our desire is gold. That's the highest. That's why it's called the gold standard. It's the most
Yeah.
precious of precious metals. And you mentioned about pulling out of the earth and the processing of the gold. It reminds me of Psalm 139, which we covered a while back, which says, "Search me, O Yah, and know my heart." That word for search me, I'm searching my head for the word, but it is the word that's used elsewhere to excavate, to extract,
Mm.
um,
Nice.
like gold.
Right.
And you mentioned under lock and key that we should guard. That's Shema. We are to observe. We are to watch over. We are to keep. So all these are all tied together with the same theme. We should desire it, lock it up as something precious, lock it up in our hearts and in our minds,
Yes.
because it is the most precious of because we serve. We can't serve two masters. We have only one true love, and that's our love for Yah. And from that, we can love wife, we can love children, we can love uh, pizza, but with the recognition of that which is on the right standard, the gold standard, the tasty standard. You don't lust after something that you don't find appealing. So it's got to appeal to us, which requires that new birth. The word is written for those who are experiencing or have experienced that transition from death to life, from disobedience to obedience. And you mentioned the golden rule, um, that in Messiah's day there was a wide circulated reference to don't treat people the way that you do not want to be treated.
Mm.
That was Hine. And the idea is that Messiah turned it on its head by saying, don't treat anybody. Treat others as you want to be treated. Turn
Right.
a negative into a positive. That we don't live like the religious saying, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. It's this is life, this is life, this is all good choices. Here it is. Make the choice. Select that. And also with gold, in this first half of the verse mentions Zahav and Paz, mentions both types of gold.
Right.
One
Right.
being gold, one considered, let's see, Paz Rav, much or precious. Rav is where we get greatness. We get the rabbis will come from Rav. It comes from exalted ones. So it is exalted, much pure gold. And we know that the pure the gold, it's most pure when it's been refined. We are gold in many ways, in our preciousness, but when we've been refined, when we go through testing, it makes us that much more. And I've used this illustration before, that the gold caster keeps refining the gold,
Mm.
until the gold appears to be a mirror in which he can see himself in the item that he's
Wow.
making. So Yah wants to see us in him. When he looks at us, he wants to see the family resemblance. That's my boy, that's my girl. And we actually, with a little bias, I'm sure that Herman, when he saw little Sarah in the playground, caught a little bit of himself, caught a little bit of Gladys, and yet also appreciating for who she is as an individual. You know, that when we see that spark and that came from me, and I'm so responsible, and I love that child so much, and we
Mm.
start seeing that they take up things that we are interested in. Like when my children started to like to do art and draw and play music and such like that, I felt so good that they would follow after that. And I think that's so beautiful. So again, we are to have desire, when within the confines of marriage, our carnal desires are placated, are fulfilled, not somebody else's. Again, we don't covet somebody else's anything, because what we have is sufficient. The grace is sufficient to us. As Shaul struggled with the thing that was a problem to him, and Yah responded to, my grace is sufficient for you. You're not lacking any good thing. I am sufficient for you. I am to be desired. And let me just see if there was any other point there. Um, yeah, I think I'll leave it there. But that was the word that I found really fascinating. The Hamad. We are to lust Okay, more to be lusted after than precious gold is what? Tell me, what's better than gold? What's sweeter than honey? What's sweeter than honey? Well, you could say, well, date palms. The dates are also very tasty, and we've been eating a lot of dates lately, instead of cakes and such like that. The date is very tasty. Regina really loves them. So sweet stuff. They didn't have all this artificial sweetening, and they didn't have sugar cane, but
Right.
they had honey. And when you talked about the liquid honey, you notice that the honey is so rich. It doesn't just drip like water. It drips very slowly, very richly, just like
Right.
a king. Just like a king. When you ask a king to come, he comes
Wow.
slowly and majestically. He doesn't come running. Yes, yes. What can I do for you? He comes with all majesty, and the honey drips
Yeah.
in a very majestic, deliberate fashion. It's just like love. Don't rush love. Let
Mm,
love awaken in its own time. So and studying the scriptures, we've come to love Yah because we've allowed it to mature. We're not just infatuated, but we are in deep love with Yah through His Word.
yes. Bob, you did when you said that thing about it just drips slowly. It just reminded me that commercial, the anticipation with the ketchup, just slowly and coming down from the bottle, that richness, the thickness.
I want to give Hadassah her
Yes.
props here. Um, when you were showing some of those necklace combinations, she
Uh-huh.
said it looks like two sparkling eyes and a big smile, and it did.
Ah, yes.
And
Yes.
she adds, I think wisdom and understanding eventually brings the gold standard and the gold and the silver. Yeah. Wisdom and understanding are to be desired. And we can only get that through the source of lusting after that source, knowing
Mhm.
that we have great wealth of knowledge and understanding. And not just in and of itself, but a deeper appreciation of that source. So that understanding comes with a deeper understanding, a
Right.
deeper love. That's it. I'll stop there.
That's it.
I'll stop
Okay.
there.
All right. Let's move on. And what's going on here again? All right. Let's see what.
The honey part, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I am hoping to present it here. You know, folks, I am having a little difficulty presenting the PowerPoint on the screen, and I don't understand why. All right, let's try it again. Hmm. Bob?
Can I say something while you're doing that?
Yes, by all means, by all means.
When we talk about the sweetness, I was just talking about the sweetness of honey and of dates. But honey was the gold standard of sweetness, right? When we contrast with those who abandoned Torah, we turned justice into bitterness, and so
Right.
instead of sweetness, we wind up with bitterness. And I was going to read a couple of verses from the book of Amos, but if you want to do that portion for it, we can do that.
Yes, yes, I might as well. Once I have it now, I don't want to lose it again.
Exactly.
But we're going to shift gears from the gold to the sweetness of the golden honey. And as I read before, I'll read it again for those to get a little more familiar with the Hebrew. Now I'm going to read it slowly, okay? So we have tukim mi devash, and there's the word for honey, devash, mi devash, ve nofet sufim, and there's that dripping honey, that nofet sufim, the dripping honey. Alrighty. Again, the theme of the evening, the physical helps us to understand the spiritual. And when we look at God's word as a whole, we see that the word is compared to many edible things. First of all, we have the milk of the word, and that milk is designed for the babes, for the new babe in the faith, right? Where they're reading and it's on a certain level, right? You have the degree, as I said, there's degrees. Then you have the bread of the word, which is a basic staple for general sustenance, and that is applicable also to both the physical and the spiritual. Then we have the meat of the word for the mature believer who can digest a lot of in depth portions of the word. And there I have the references. You can look them up, folks. But then, after that beautiful meal, right? The honey, that sweet dessert after a hearty meal. And what we can draw from this, folks, whether it's milk, whether it's the bread, whether it's the meat or the honey, is that this is spiritual food for us. It is spiritual food, but just like in the physical, because remember, the physical helps us to understand the spiritual, you must ingest the word. There are no shortcuts. You have to read, you have to chew on the word, think it through, ruminate on it, right? Like the animals, and think it over again and read it again and sit still before the Lord and pray about the word. Okay. Right. This is how it's going to nourish you. This is how it's going to nourish you, folks. There are no shortcuts. You must ingest it in order to benefit from it. Now, um, you'll remember that I said that you have repetition for emphasis, yet distinction. And I did make a distinction between the written word and the living word that gave his life for us. Now, with the honey that's directly from the comb is deemed to be more nutritious than the pasteurized honey that we usually find in the store, right? And hence it's a higher grade. It's a higher grade. That unpasteurized, unfiltered honey is of a higher grade nutritionally than what we normally find in the stores. And I'm going to read something. I read quite a few articles online, and I'm just going to read this quickly so you can get an idea. But as I'm reading through this, folks, try to apply it to the word. Okay, so just quickly, raw honey can be defined as honey straight from the hive, right? Right, that food that's directly from the hive, the word that's directly from the scriptures. If raw honey is slightly heated while processing, it is called raw unpasteurized honey, slight heating, as this honey has not been heated to very high temperatures. Most of the properties of raw honey nutrition are still intact. On the other hand, regular honey is prepared by passing raw honey through multiple steps, such as pasteurization and filtration. Moving on quickly. Pasteurization involves heating honey to a high temperature, and during this heating process, most of the benefits associated with raw honey nutritions are lessened to some degree. So pasteurization and filtration of raw unpasteurized honey has its pros and cons, like everything else in life, right? The filtration gives a smooth consistency to the regular honey, but it also filters out some of the key ingredients of the raw honey nutrition, like antioxidants and pollens and so on. Thus, raw unpasteurized honey is more nutritious and beneficial than regular honey found in the market. Okay, so what are the lessons that I and you can get from this, right? So here are the questions that I'd like to pose to you with the hope that you would think these through. Number one, do you know Yahweh and his son, or do you just know about Yah and his son? Because there is a difference, a big difference, right? Do you read the Bible directly? Are you getting it directly from the honeycomb? Or do you just read books about the Bible, right? Filtrations through the filtration process. Are you only reading the word filtered through a translation? And I have nothing against translations. Translation have their place, and I am grateful for all of the translations that the Bible has been translated to. But here's the question, because we're talking about degrees of grade. Are you reading the word filtered through a translation, or do you refer to the original languages during your studies? Now, of course, most of us are not Hebrew scholars or Greek scholars. However, There is so much information out there, and with the computers and the free Bible programs that are available, we can begin to tap into directly into the comb. And we can begin by looking up certain words in Hebrew or in Aramaic or in Greek and tap directly into the word and start to taste that sweeter, higher grade of honey that the
Yes.
word provides. Okay. So, folks, I want to encourage you, please think about these questions. All right. Uh, don't focus so much, don't get it so much through the filtration. Read the word yourself. And when you can, check out the original languages. Drink and eat directly from the comb. Okay. Alrighty. So now, if you read the Bible, folks, and you can't seem to delight in the sweetness of His Word, all right, that's a very serious issue. Please do some introspection. Take time to think about what's going on in your life because you should be able to delight in the Word. And then go to Yah in prayer and discuss this issue because this is a vital issue, folks. You should be delighting in the Word. It should not be a burden to you. It should not be something where you feel, oh, I got to clock in this religious time to score some brownie points. It doesn't work that way. You should really delight in the Word. And as I said, if you're not, then something is wrong and go to Him in sincere prayer. Okay, folks? Alrighty. Bob, I'm going to leave it here because the next we've covered the two natural resources, and the next are the two signposts. But I'm going to leave it here because I know you have much to say about the honey as well.
Okay, I wanted to. This other part might be better to go with next week's teaching then because it gets a little extensive and it's already 8:27. But I just wanted to refer to Psalm 34, which I read last week, but in context with the sweetness of Yah, where the psalmist says, "Oh, taste and see that Yahuwah is Tov, He's good.
Mhm.
Blessed is the man who trusts in Him. Oh, fear Yahuwah, you His tzaddikim, kadoshim, your set apart ones. There is no want to those who fear Him." So again, we trust, we fear, but we taste. We get samples of Him. We taste and see. We see that, and like he was saying, it's dangerous if we don't quite connect with the taste. And there are those who are definitely meat and potato guys and gals. They don't really want to try something different. And we're so steeped in that, we think we can transition that mindset into the kingdom. And we can't. Because the things of the Olam Hazeh, which is this current world, are incompatible with the things of the Olam Haba, that which is coming. So we need to taste and prove all things, test all things. Well, I didn't learn that in Sunday school when I was 8 years old. That's fine. Taste it, prove it.
Mhm.
If it's true, you hold on to it. If it's bad, you reject it. But we taste and see that He is Tov. He is Tov. And the words that come from Him are
Amen.
equally Tov. And from that, you get the fear of Yah. You get to trust Yah. It's just like you were just saying, we just don't believe in Yah. We believe Yah. It's a different level. We believe in Him in the sense that, yeah, I know He's out there somewhere, but to believe Him means we trust in the Word. The Word is ingraining itself into us. And so we are maturing and we are growing. And our taste and our palates are becoming more sophisticated, where we used to just be burgers and fries. And all of a sudden we're having filet mignon and we're having, think of something exotic. I'm not an exotic guy, but you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yes.
We start conforming our palate to something better, more nutritious, like you're saying, straight from the honeycomb. We buy a jar of honey, we think, I got honey. Well, maybe not so much. It's been said, and I mentioned to you and the brethren last Monday on our conversation that when I was a young man, I used to drink a quart of orange juice a day, Then all of a sudden, I noticed one time my eyes had turned blood red. The whites had turned blood red. And we went to a physician and it turned out that I had a vitamin C deficiency. even though I was drinking all this orange juice, the orange juice had been so pasteurized and
Mm.
denuded of its healthy qualities that I was drinking orange colored and sweet flavored drink rather than actual juice from the pulp and the good natural goodness. So check with yourselves. Go look for on the farmers market and thing like that. Go look for honey. Look for some honey. It's going to taste different, and based on the pollen that was used by the bee to make this honey creates differences there also. So you think there's a honey flavor, but there's subtle differences, and it's beautiful that when you taste the honey and the honeycomb, and sometimes you can actually buy them in a jar with pieces of the honeycomb in the jar.
Mm.
And isn't that wonderful? That's where it's from, people. It doesn't come in a little teddy bear shape that we squeeze and we put on our things. There's something much better for you. So check and see, taste and see that there's real honey out there, raw and like you're saying with regards to when we're reading the Bible. A lot of us are reading translations made by people with ulterior motives, and they're like shepherds herding you in a certain direction by their translation, whereas
Mm.
something more profound is actually being said, and we're missing the goodness of it.
Yes, Bob, this is why I try to bring out the Hebrew as much as possible so that we can go directly to the source, to the comb, so to speak, and the light directly from the honeycomb. And again, folks, I as I was reading this, I saw the repetition, but then I started to see the difference in grade, and I just needed to share that point that there is a difference in grade.
Amen. I mean, in the overflowing of the word, we were a little concerned early on that one verse might not tide us over for a whole
Mm.
teaching, and it was more than enough. And like I said, I could go on for the 20 minutes on the portion I wanted to share, but I'll let that linger because for every sweetness there's a bitterness, and Amos the prophet indicates these things. We'll get into the next week, Yah willing, as
Okay,
we continue
beautiful.
in the
Yeah,
process and the discovery and the goodness. Any final words today, Hernan?
yeah. Well, next week you can continue with the sweetness, and then I'll go into the signposts, and we'll just plug along. It's good. It's all good.
Amen. Amen. Shalom, shalom. And again, we're so welcome. We're so grateful that you're with us, Hadassah. Adding in pithy little comments here and there. That's wonderful. Those of you who are remaining silent are okay. We know you're out there. We can hear you breathing, but don't be bashful. You can be bashful, and I'll be grumpy, and Herman will be dopey.
Okay.
We'll be the seven dwarves. No, I'm
Yes.
just kidding.
No, it's good.
So
It's good. I can take a joke. I can take a joke. It's good. It's cool.
I'll be grumpy, but Yah willing, we will once again continue in this. And I hope that you're appreciating this. You're watching this later or another day. That's all Tov. But if you watch us live, please throw some comments on the chat, and
Yeah.
if you can give a thumbs up, that's also Tov as far as the algorithms of that are observed by the YouTube folk. So, amen. Happy face.
Yes.
Okay.
Nice smiley
And
face.
I'd like to ask our sister Patricia, are you there?
Yeah,
No.
I am.
All right. If you would do us the honors of a final closing prayer.
Okay. Our video mail our Father and our King. Blessed art thou,
Yes.
Creator of the heavens and the earth. We honor you for who you are, and great is your faithfulness unto us. We look to you for your guidance. We ask you to bless each family this night. We thank you for all the blessings you bestow upon us. Bless and protect each one of them. You, Father, are so worthy to be praised. We thank you for all things. To Yeshua,
Thank
be
you.
all glory, honor, and praise. Hallelujah.
Amen.
In Yeshua's name, I
Amen. Hallelujah. Beautiful, Patricia. Beautiful. Toda rabah. So again, keep us in prayer. Let people know about this. If this has been a blessing to you, please pass the word. Pass the word. That's the only way we will grow. We're not asking for your shekels. We're asking for your attention. And again, prove all things, test all things, and look back at some of the previous teachings that we've done,
Yeah, that'll be
both
good.
here on the midweek MIDrash and also on our Shabbat morning services as well, which, Yah willing, we will continue also. This coming Sabbath, we will be preparing for the new year. Next Monday is the spring equinox, the vernal equinox, and Wednesday will be the first day of the new Chodesh. It'll be the Rosh Chodesh, the head of the months, beginning of the year, and we will start preparing for Pesach. It's right here. It's approaching very quickly. So we say Toda Rabah, we say thank you very much. We say Shalom, Shalom. We also say Laila Tov Lehitraot, good night, and we will see you soon, a little further down the road, and we'll be once again, our paths will merge, and we'll chat. We'll talk a little further. What can I say? We'll chat. We'll communicate. We'll commiserate. We'll chew the fat together. And we say shalom for now.
Shalom, Bob, and to
Amen.
everyone out there. Bye-bye.
Amen. Again, my brothers and sisters, late but still listening. Oh, Colin. Colin just joined us all the way from Wales.